Senator Bernie Sanders, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. You've been heavily involved in the Amazon unionization attempt in Bessemer, Alabama, traveling there, speaking out in favor of the move. We're expecting a result from that vote, maybe as early as tomorrow. What will a yes vote mean, not just for Amazon and not just for labor unions in this country, but for American capitalism?
Well, as you know, Mehdi, Amazon is one of the largest corporations in the country. It is owned by the wealthiest individual in this nation, Jeff Bezos, worth $180 billion. And when I was down in Birmingham talking to the workers, what you heard is tales of incredibly bad working conditions, people who are disrespected, people whose concerns are not being heard, and they want a union to represent them. So obviously, if they win that union organizing drive, and I hope that they do, it will not only be important for Amazon workers in Birmingham, I think it will spread all over this country to other Amazon warehouses, and I think it will be a shot in the arm for union organizing all across this country. It is no great secret that wages for workers have been stagnant for decades now. Rich are getting richer. Many workers are working longer hours for low wages. We got to grow the union movement. And if we are successful in Birmingham, I think it will have an impact on union organizing around the country.
Yes, I think that will be the case. Let's see what happens. You and Elizabeth Warren and other progressive lawmakers were the subject of trolling by an Amazon PR Twitter account last week. Apparently, it's been reported that Jeff Bezos himself was upset that company officials weren't defending Amazon enough from your criticisms. He's also refused your invitation to testify in front of the Senate. I wonder, how much do you think representative democracy in this country is threatened by the power of a single citizen who is worth $180 billion? I
think it's a serious problem. When we talk about income and wealth inequality, it's not just that two people, Bezos being one of them, own more wealth than the bottom 40% of the American people. That is wrong unto itself. But I think we forget the kind of power that these individuals have. Bezos owns the Washington Post. You have large corporations who have thousands of lobbyists all over Washington, D.C., former leaders of the Democratic and Republican Party. They make incredible campaign contributions. So when we talk about the need to create a vibrant democracy, it means taking on income and wealth inequality, bringing power back to ordinary people through campaign finance reform, through ending gerrymandering, to ending the suppression of voters. But it is a big issue. It is a very big issue in terms of the power of the few.
Yes. And yet, President Joe Biden, while he's admirably proposing an increase in corporate and income tax rates, is refusing to consider a wealth tax on billionaires like Bezos. Why do you think that is? And have you spoken to him about it?
Well, I've spoken to the White House, and they are more than familiar with my views on the need to address income and wealth inequality. And I think one of the ways that you do that is, simply speaking, a wealth tax. When you have somebody like Bezos worth $180 billion, when you have the Walton family worth even more than that, one way you raise income for the government and you deal with this terrible inequality is through a wealth tax. Now, by the way, my Republican colleagues want to make a bad situation worse. Unbelievably, they want to repeal the estate tax entirely, which will give hundreds of billions of dollars in tax breaks to the top 0.1%. So I think this is the moment for progressive taxations, not only a wealth tax, but an increase in corporate taxes, to say that we cannot continue to have this kind of massive income and wealth inequality.
So on that note, a lot of people think this is a pretty progressive moment in American politics. Democrats in control of the White House and Congress, Joe Biden pushing through progressive legislation like the $2 trillion American Rescue Plan. We had part one of the infrastructure plan laid out this week, also worth around $2 trillion. But over 8 years, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and others in the climate movement think that's a good start, but it just isn't enough money to deal with the challenges we face, especially when spread out over 8 years. They're right, aren't they?
I think they are. I think one of the issues we have been focusing on is the crisis in affordable and low-income housing. And I think the Biden proposal is a serious effort to build the millions of units that we need to address that crisis. I don't think it goes far enough in terms of climate. The truth is, as everybody knows, the scientists tell us that we have a handful of years in front of us in order to transform our energy system away from fossil fuel, or we're going to face awful crises in terms of irreparable damage to our planet. So I would propose more, and when we do that, we can create millions of good-paying jobs.
So let's talk a bit more about that infrastructure plan. You want part 2 of the plan to include healthcare. You're proposing lowering the Medicare eligibility age from 65 to 60 or even 55. And I wonder, given your influence on the Biden administration, the LA Times recently called you a power broker, Senator. Do you think between now and 2024, you can get this president to not just support that age reduction, but also get on board with Medicare for all itself, with single payer? Is it possible for you to persuade him or pressure him into that?
Well, Mehdi, two things. In the immediate moment, I want to focus in the new reconciliation plan on not only physical infrastructure, roads and bridges and climate change, but on human infrastructure as well. And that means addressing the crisis in education. So many of our young people cannot afford to go to college, higher education. So many of young people leaving school deeply in debt. Those are issues we've got to deal with. But in terms of the needs of seniors and older workers, what we have got to do immediately is expand Medicare to cover dental care, to cover hearing aids, to cover eyeglasses. These are health care issues that impact millions of older people who cannot afford these basic services. Now, to answer your question, I believe that the current healthcare system, based on private insurance and employer-based healthcare, is dysfunctional.
Yeah.
We spend twice as much per capita as any other country. 90 million are uninsured or underinsured. Do I believe we got to go to Medicare for all? Absolutely. That is not at this moment the president's view. But we got a strong grassroots movement that is going to do everything that we can to make sure this president moves in the direction of understanding that healthcare is a human right, not simply an employer-based benefit.
You mentioned the grassroots movement. A lot of frustrated progressives, especially online, and you know this, often ask, why can't you, Bernie Sanders, use the leverage that Joe Manchin often uses to get his own way on issues like the $15 minimum wage or expanding health care? Why can't you throw your weight around, they say, throreaten to vote against things like Joe Manchin so successfully does?
First of all, if you look at the results of what happened, look, I'm not the president. But I think what most people would tell you is what we did in the rescue plan was the most significant piece of legislation for working class people in the modern history of this country. And we're moving forward in a similar direction. We can't get everything we want. That's simply the reality. Any one person can say no. But right now, I think we are moving forward. We're going to push it as hard as we possibly can. And I'm proud of the direction in which we are moving.
And just on Joe Manchin, you say you support getting rid of the filibuster, but Senator Joe Manchin has said he won't agree to that. He doesn't back a $15 minimum wage increase. He doesn't back the 28% corporate tax rate that's proposed. When you were running for president, you said you would go to West Virginia and rally working people there against Senator Manchin, pressure him to do the right thing. Hold on. Let me just ask the question. Let me just ask the question, Senator. Do you think President Biden should pressure Joe Manchin in the way you said you would, or will that just make him defect to the Republican Party, some people say?
First of all, talk to Joe Manchin. But second of all, there is a lot of work being done internally in terms of bringing the Democratic caucus together. Once again, we passed the most significant piece of emergency legislation, which, among other things, will cut childhood poverty in half. I expect that the second reconciliation bill will be very profound in creating millions of good-paying jobs. And by the way, I'm going to do everything that I can, along with others, in making sure that we do pass that $15 an hour minimum wage.
Understood.
As well
but
as
you support internal pressure. But you support internal pressure on Joe Manchin, not publicly going to West Virginia and calling him out, as you said.
Well, I think there are a variety. I have no problem with going to West Virginia. But I think we need a grassroots movement that makes it clear to Joe Manchin and everybody else in the United States Senate, including Republicans, that the progressive agenda is what the American people want. They want to raise that minimum wage to $15 an hour. They believe that health care is a human right, should be universal. They demand that the rich start paying their fair share of taxes. These are not my ideas. This is what the American people want right now. And our job is to rally the American people in every state in this country to make sure that the government starts working for the working class of this country, not just the 1%.
And on that passionate note, we'll have to leave it there. Senator Bernie Sanders, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you very much.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.